All right, welcome back to Oregon Live at the Voice of College Football. We're wrapping up Oregon's 41-7 win over rival Oregon State. 129th meeting, last one before these two take a break in 2026, and it wasn't close. Ducks, fight a little bit in that first quarter, allow a touchdown on a long Beavers drive where they got the run going, but then really shut it down. Beavers couldn't get anything going to the run, just 25 yards on the ground in the last three quarters. Ducks run the score up, didn't feel close by the end. It wasn't close. Dante Moore, 4 touchdowns, 21 to 31, 305 yards, and a career high 53 yards on the ground, which we'll get into. Ducks held Malik Murphy, quarterback, to 28% and 68 yards passing. Just absolutely shut down the guy who's a deep ball thrower for this team. John, let's just get into it here. Where is Dante Moore through 4 weeks? He's really got he's got the starting role. They're going to the biggest game of the season. Where is he?
Dante Moore looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country after 4 weeks of this season. He continues to, it seems like, get better and, kind of learn and improve things throughout from week to week. He's still taking those easy routes underneath, but then you can see today they dialed up a couple of deep shots that he wasn't able to hit. There was one that Malik Benson, he looked like he was streaking wide open. Dante checked it down on that one. There was one to Decorian Moore that they looked like he could have potentially hit with a little more loft under it, but he's doing everything really well right now. And then eventually they do get to that deep shot later in that game, hit Gary Bryant on one for a big 50-yard touchdown. Good to see Gary Bryant being able to get some of those vertical routes downfield for a guy who, I don't know what it looks like. The last time I checked it, his ADOT, his average depth of target, was like 2-3 yards from the line of scrimmage. He's just been getting a bunch of work on screen passes. So good to see him, kind of get some of that work down the field, be able to stretch things out vertically, because he does have a lot of speed. But Owen, just going back to overall where I'm at with this game, I was really impressed by the way that the Ducks were able to kind of turn things on, like you said, after that first quarter. Yeah. Like you mentioned, just 25 rushing yards for Oregon State after that first quarter, and that's what really stood out to me. Just the way that Oregon was able to completely shut them down, kind of after that first quarter, and that's what I asked Bryce Betcher about after the game. It's what I asked Dan Lanning about after the game, and both of them responded that, hey, we just started playing our ball after that. We got kind of, focused in a little bit, played more technical with, some of the technique and stuff like that. But it was just Oregon getting back to their game. And I was surprised after how kind of slow it felt like this thing started off, that it really was able to end up in a blowout, where these stats did not look close. I was really surprised, obviously, at how bad it ended up being from Malik Murphy on the completion percentage front. But it's statistically across the board, Oregon dominates this game, and that's really what it didn't look like. It didn't look like that through that first quarter. So really excited by the way these Ducks turned things up after that.
Yeah, I was really impressed. We talk about how much Dante's matured as a player, and you hear it in the way he talks, but how he was able to bounce back from mistakes. And I felt like that was what really set him apart from Malik Murphy, because Malik would miss a deep shot and then get too scared to check it down and just keep trying and keep missing. And that's how you end up with 28% completion. Dante really was able, and this is credit to the Will Stein scheme as well, and how well he understands his quarterback. But the fact that he's able to, miss Malik Benson by 2 or 3 yards on that second drive of the game, and then come back and the first drive and hit Decorian Moore back shoulder with a fantastic throw. It happened. They get into 3rd and 8 in the second quarter. He's missed a couple guys. He missed Gary Bryant on a drag, and then he comes back and an unbelievable, probably 40-yard crossfield ball that hits Malik Benson right in the hands to convert. Then he hits Kenyon Sadiq again. He hits Benson again. It's the fact that he's able to rebound from missing these throws. And somebody asked Dan Lanning about it, and he was like, well, he threw for 300 yards. So he was good. But I was really interested to hear what he would have said at that, because I feel like that's really a credit to what Dante's done and how he's evolved.
No, I'd agree. Today was the most shaky that Dante has looked in terms of his just general accuracy. He had the interception last week, but that was more of a situation where he was trying to throw into the wind, trying to throw a deep ball into the wind at Northwestern, a situation that really just wasn't really favorable to him. But he was a little shakier in terms of he did miss some guys on some shorter throws, missed some guys on some intermediate throws that he hadn't missed in previous weeks. But like you said, to be able to bounce back from those and not let them kind of settle with him and sit with him long term, be able to just immediately reset. Hey, okay, next one, we're going to hit our receiver. We're going to work the ball downfield, and the completion percentage ends up a little lower than where those other games are at, but he's still moving the ball just fine. And all the efficiency marks that you really want to be looking at, stuff like yards per attempt, he's still right on track with where he's been through the early parts of the season as one of the most efficient passers in the country.
Yeah, I was curious because you don't see him miss a lot of receivers. Like he'll hit guys and he'll have too much zip on it, or like the more one where there was just like not quite enough arc and he hit him in the hands, but it's a tough one to catch. But like he was kind of missing guys a little bit today. Are you concerned about that, or does that just feel like something that maybe today was just an off day?
No, what was that?
Is that something that concerns you at all, or is it
No,
just not?
no. I think he can figure out that pass specifically, but I don't think that's a long term. It's not an issue. It's an issue you're consider. The accuracy isn't an issue that I really consider for him, because we have seen him demonstrate so many times on that Malik Benson touchdown a couple weeks ago, on hitting him on the sideline last week, on hitting people like guys like DeCorian Moore and Benson today on the back shoulder. I was impressed by his accuracy again. It continues to be a big part of his game, and a big part of what all of the Oregon quarterbacks have done recently under Will Stein and under Kenny Dillingham in this Dan Lanning system. They all like to get the ball out on time, get it out accurately, and distribute to your playmakers. And Dante has done that really well. And then when those shots have been there, he's been able to take them and really stretch this offense out and turn it into something explosive.
Yeah, something else that guys like Bo and Dylan Gabriel really understood. It felt like under Kenny and Will Stein is when to scramble. They weren't big runners. They weren't guys where you'd really design an option to go. But they understood when they could escape the pocket and go get 10 or 15 or 20 yards. And that's exactly what Dante Moore did a couple times today. Finished, I think it's a career high, 53 yards rushing.
Yeah, it was. And that's 53 yards.
That feels like something he learned, right? And plus,
that's 53 yards. That's 53 yards with a sack too on there, a 9-yard sack first of the season. Exactly, first of the season to go against Oregon. But like you said, he was just scrambling on, doing a good job at when the pocket was collapsing around him, being able to navigate within it to find that lane out of it for the most part. I'd have to rewatch what exactly happened on that sack. I think it came off the right side, off of Alex Harkey's side at tackle. But like he for the most part, Dante did a really good job at stepping up into the pocket where he needed to, and then from there being okay, here's the lane out of it, and I can go take off. And he got 17 on one carry on a scramble. He got 28 on the big one down the sideline that looked like he could have gotten more if he had gotten a better block from Sadiq. But really good job by Dante. And just like he said after the game, just being a playmaker when he has to. Coach Lanning has encouraged it from him, and he admits that he's not the fastest player ever out there, that they're not designing those kind of run plays for him. But he's a football player, and he makes football plays when he has to, and able to pick up a couple. That 28-yard scramble came for him on the 2-minute drill drive to end the first half. Yep. Oregon now 4 for 4 in those situations. I think that's obviously they haven't been faced with a lot of challenging situations yet so far this season, but those are that's situational football that you have to play that will get you ready for those times where you are backed up against teams like Penn State and you do have to have must-have it drives. Oregon's 4 for 4 for those on early this season. I think that's really encouraging to see, and just how comfortable Dante does look operating the offense at those end of halves, be able to move them in those short time situations.
Yeah, let's get a little bit into the defense because like we mentioned, the Ducks really did struggle to stop the run. It felt like an extension of that Northwestern game a little bit in the first quarter, where it just felt like because Malik Murphy was still not hitting his guys. His biggest play of the game was that busted coverage that got the Beavs down to the 1-yard line. But it felt like Anthony Hankerson just could get in and get 6 or 7 yards on a first down. I don't know how much you've seen so far, but how do they close it up? What were guys saying about that?
We didn't hear a lot about it. We only got Tam Tuioti and Bryce Betcher, the two defensive players we got. They didn't say a ton about what was going on specifically, but I thought I saw, like, from the interior of the defensive line, Tion Gray was the guy who really stood out to me, as he played a lot better today against the run than he did last week at Northwestern. He just felt like he was, sometimes it felt like last week, he's a young guy. He's a redshirt freshman out there playing as a starting nose tackle, but at 6'6", 336 pounds, is a huge kid. So sometimes it felt like last week at Northwestern, they get under him with these double teams and be able to drive him off the ball a little bit. This week he had, one play where they just one-on-one with their guard. He stood them up, walled the Oregon State right guard, and then discarded him and helped Tam Tuioti to make a tackle. I thought Amari Washington was really good again, and you could notice that they were running away from Amari Washington's side a lot in the early parts of that game. They were kind of, if Amari would be lined up to the left, they'd run it to the right. I just thought throughout Oregon's front. Everybody played with a lot more consistency in terms of their pad level. That's something I'll definitely get into this week as I continue to watch more film and get ready for this Penn State game. But there were a lot of improvements that really needed to happen before you go to Penn State, and it felt like, they did struggle at first, but they locked it really down after that, and it feels like they should be in a good place for where they want to be heading to Penn State.
Yeah. The other guy I want to talk about when we talk about the improvement of this defense is Bryce Betcher, because we know this game means a lot to him. He's a Eugene kid. What did Tatum say? Like, that boy crazy. And he was, the one I wrote down was when he was talking about, he makes 9 tackles in the first half, 10 overall. And just because I was in the flow state, man, it was the best feeling in the world. What did Bryce Betcher do in this game? We've heard guys talk about how much of an impact player he is on this defense, just like in terms of being the guy who hypes people up. Like, why is he so important to this Oregon defense? What did he do in this game? What does he mean to this team, man?
Like you said, especially in that first half, he was just flying around out there. 9 tackles. What did he finish with? 10 or 11? I think 11 is his career high, so I don't think he quite got there. But he looked like he was going to in that first half, especially when Oregon State was running the ball a little bit more successfully at first. It was Bryce Betcher who was the guy who was able to make those tackles, be able to collapse down and hold them. When Oregon State was being successful on the ground, it was still, less, just under 4 yards per carry on those attempts in that first quarter. So it's still not anything crazy that the Ducks are giving up. And it was Bryce Betcher was that guy coming in there to make those hits. And he doesn't finish with as many tackles as he did throughout that first half, just because of kind of where the game script got. Oregon State had to throw the ball a bunch late in that one. They basically weren't running the ball successfully in the second quarter, and then basically went away from it after that. And so Bryce Betcher didn't have those opportunities to make those plays near the line of scrimmage. But you can tell with Bryce Betcher, these games mean something more to him.
Yeah, especially when he's in there in the fourth quarter with the twos, and he's still playing, he's still flying around. Like, that was the part that really stood out to me. And he told Dan, he told us that he told Dan, he's like, I want to be in there every play. And there weren't a lot that he was out for.
Yeah, there's just that Bryce Betcher is a Eugene kid. He's been a fan of this program since he was a kid. He understands the history of the rivalry. He was who I wrote about last year when we went into rivalry week, because he's a guy who has perspective of it on the football field, on the baseball field, as a fan growing up. And so it just means more to him. And you can really tell out there when he's on the field that he is ready to go hit some Beavers and do whatever he can, because there's no way that he is going to allow something like that 2022 game to happen again. That's just not going to happen on Bryce Betcher's watch.
Yeah, I want to get just like a little bit of a story that we heard last week. After they finished telling us how he walked on and it was hitting guys, he told a story about how at practice it was the last day we talked to him on Wednesday. He kind of just pulled out a lawn chair afterward and sat in the end zone and watched it. And that really feels like where he is. Like, he's got perspective now, kind of on this program, and that's what makes him so valuable. Obviously, he's a fantastic player and he's flying around and he's making tackles, but especially when you see the linebackers that Oregon brings up, not only the inside guys. Jerry Mixon's been fantastic, and I want to talk about him too, but just the way that Oregon's able to develop front 7 guys. I think a lot of that's down to Bryce Betcher, because you have a guy who's in the room who understands the culture of this program, and also how to grow and how to evolve as a player and learn and get smarter, because his football IQ has grown so much since he walked on. I think Oregon's just lucky to have this guy.
The culture of the program is really what Bryce has been such a big part of the entire time that he's been here. And really, Dan talked about how he's helped establish this rivalry for some of those other guys coming into the roster this year. He's been the guy in the locker room leading them the whole time. Like, hey, we got to get up for this game. I know it's Oregon State, but these are our little, like Jerry Mixon said, these are our little bros, Bryce is the one that is kind of enforcing that message to the team and kind of letting them know, hey, we don't turn down for Oregon State. We bring everything we have, and we're going to make sure we beat them. But like you said, what he said about the other day about kind of sitting after practice, I think that also just speaks to what he's helped create in terms of the culture on the team, because Bryce Betcher is a guy who Dan Lanning said when they're talking about a couple weeks ago, we had all the discussion about the NIL and stuff with Oklahoma State. Dan Lanning, it was like, Bryce Betcher came here for a T-shirt. He walked onto the football team after being a baseball player. He has worked and worked and worked to, become a contributing safety on special teams, and then become a third string linebacker, and then last year become a starting linebacker and win the Burlsworth Award and be the leader for this team. And he's been that guy the entire time, putting in extra work. And so now here he is, a guy in his fifth or sixth year here in Eugene. He's been around this program, and he's been the one, after practice every day, putting in that extra work. And now here he is. He gets to sit back in his lawn chair and, like you said, watch those other guys put in that extra work, watch his teammates at 20 minutes after practice still getting those extra reps in, still doing those extra drills. And that's part of that culture that he created, because they, these guys who Dylan Williams, when he came to campus last year, I mean, he just an example, he hasn't been on the field yet this season, but when Dylan Williams, and Braden Platt, when those guys arrived as freshman linebackers last season, they saw it every day in those meetings. They saw Bryce Betcher, taking those extra notes, asking those extra questions, getting those extra reps on the field after practice. And then that's really translated down. And now Bryce is the guy sitting back, watching his teammates and knowing that this is going to continue because of the culture that we've established here.
Yeah, Oregon's lucky, man. I'm going to give you your Jerry Mixon minute here. He got his start. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week. What did you see from him? He had that like nasty hit really early on somebody running a drag, and it felt like that just kind of set the tone for where Oregon was going to go. And he got a lot of snaps here. Doesn't get a pick. We're really disappointed to hear that, Jerry. But but what are you seeing from him? Is he going to be the guy you feel for that game at Penn State?
Yeah, I think so. He should be starting out there next to Betcher at linebacker. I thought Jackson did play a better game today. Devin Jackson did. He seems like he's kind of finding himself a little bit more. It's just the hesitancy that he's had out there for a guy that is as fast as he is. He just plays with a little bit of hesitancy. It felt like I really saw it on the tape in that Northwestern game where he's just, you pause it a second into the play and everyone else is moving and Devin Jackson's still standing where he was before the play started, because whether that's he's collecting his reads, whether that's, maybe I don't know exactly what the play call is for Oregon. So every time, but he just hasn't, moved with the same urgency that guys like Jerry Mixon and Bryce Betcher have out there at linebacker, and then Mixon was really doing it again today. He's always the first one to react. It feels like he's just got really good instincts, really good reaction time to those plays, and you could see it today. 2 pass breakups for him, led the team, with those 2 pass breakups, and those are instincts plays where he's watching things, reading things, and then able to jump into those lanes. And then he does a really good job at baiting those quarterbacks, and we saw that last week in that. They tried to run a Texas route at him, just a little angle route. He was watching the quarterback all the way, and then before the quarterback even started throwing that thing last week, he jumped in front of it. So he just plays with it's instincts. It's all mental with him. He's a really good athlete, but what makes his game the next level is those mental things where he's timing up the snap count to get in there to make a play against the run and setting someone up so that he can make a play and then be a game-changing play in the pass game.
Yeah, I think that's really where Oregon's maybe made one of the bigger steps this year. I mean, DB was good, and they looked very solid again today, even just against a guy who takes a lot of deep shots. But the fact that they've got 2 guys there at linebacker who you can feel really, really confident in, it's just a game changer. I mean, last thing before I had to break here, anytime you hold a guy to 28% completion under 100 yards, it's a success. Do you feel like that was more on Malik Murphy kind of losing control of and losing sight of what he wanted to do in this Oregon State passing game, or is that really down to how stifling the Ducks were?
I think it's something I'll have to definitely rewatch, but I think I ultimately off first watch, I'd say that's what Oregon was doing to this team. Oregon State just had nowhere to go with the football at times. It felt like Murphy. I had it pulled up earlier, like his passing chart, like his pass by pass. And it was like he completed one like 14-40 something and left in the second quarter. And then his next completed pass wasn't until like 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So that was basically the entire middle 2 quarters of the game. He went like 0 for 9, basically. Didn't complete a single pass within that stretch. And it was just Oregon's defensive backs. Every single time he did try to go somewhere with the ball, they're just, not only was he getting pressure in his face from the defensive front, be able to force a scramble out at times that made him make some mess with his accuracy, but then the defensive backs from Oregon just every time rallying to the football when it does get thrown short. That's something this team has done really well all season, and then getting to the football to make those plays on the ball when it is up in the air, when they are trying to come over the middle, delivering those hits and be able to disengage those. the Ducks played a lot more man-to-man coverage today than their zone looks. They split that up. They have the guys who can play man right now. In terms of what they have at cornerback, you have some really good man-to-man cover guys out there. And Dan said that they went to a lot more of those looks today to just kind of shut some of those windows down that Murphy has relied on this season because the running game really hasn't been there for Oregon State so far. So he's had to do a lot more of that intermediate passing, trying to find those windows and those holes in the zone. And so because Oregon knew that was what they were going to try to look for, Oregon State was today in the passing game, they went man to man, and they just have the matchups to kind of they're superior in terms of their matchups when you have guys like Brandon Finney out there and Theron Johnson at corner, Sione Ilalea. Also good to see him back out there too.
Yes,
that's a guy who did miss last week's game.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, you say Oregon dominated the passing game. Ducks dominated a lot of this one. We're gonna head to the break here. Be right back. Talk a little bit about the Ducks running game. Wrap it up. Looking next week against Penn State. Thanks for hanging around.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
All right, welcome back to Oregon Live at the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Owen Murray. That's John Evans. We're breaking down Oregon's rivalry win, 41-7 over the Oregon State Beavers at Autzen Stadium. 129th matchup between these two. Ducks didn't keep it close, and a little bit of concern before this one because Noah Whittington listed as questionable. He ends up not playing a snap for the second straight week, but Jaden Lamar gets a start second week in a row. He looks solid. We know we love D.R. Hill and Jordan Davis. And John, what is this running game? How concerned should Ducks fans be without Noah Whittington at least fully healthy right now? Jaden Lamar seems like the guy.
Jaden Lamar's done a very solid job. He was really good today. 12 carries, 70 yards for him, almost 6 yards per carry. Last week it was a bit of a struggle on the ground, but it was across the board that Oregon's running backs didn't really have a lot of room to work with. Except for when D.R. Hill Jr. does get out on that big touchdown last week. I thought Jaden Lamar was fine last weekend. Working in replace of Noah Whittington was solid out there again today. Got things started, 22 yards on his first carry, showed some of that dynamicism that he has brought early this year. But it's just not what you want. You don't want Jaden Lamar to be your one. Not that he can't be that guy, but your team is so much better when Noah Whittington's your one, because then Jaden Lamar's your two. That Jaden Lamar's blocking a little bit more. You're using him in some of those disguises and stuff to get him, where you think he's out there to block for Whittington, then you throw him a screen pass or whatever. And Whittington also just does bring a level of explosiveness that Lamar doesn't have, that guys like Hill also bring to this offense, but it's hard to trust a true freshman out there at all times. Not that you don't necessarily trust D.R. Hill Jr., but I think the fact that he does get a lot of his touches from, coming on jet sweeps and reverses and stuff like that does speak to, they don't want him out there necessarily just being that regular running back in 11 personnel and then having a pass block on third downs and stuff like that. I don't know if you trust a freshman in the way you would trust a 6-year guy in Noah Whittington. So you want him back because it just opens everything up for the offense. It just takes everything to the next level by kicking everybody down a peg, because he can, be that explosive playmaker when this team needs it. Not that Jaden Lamar can't, but when Whittington's out there gashing these teams for 11 yards a carry, I think is what he's averaging early so far this year in those first two games. When Lamar comes in as a change of pace, or when Davison comes in as a change of pace, or when they're in to block for him, it just makes him so much more threatening out there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and we don't know what Noah's status is. All we've heard, I think, is a lower body injury. Correct?
I haven't heard about that
Yeah.
specifically. That wouldn't surprise me. Although we did see him, like he
He
participated
was
in
warming up, like
yeah, he
pretty
participated
solidly
in like
today.
warm up drills and stuff like that. But then they went to like the 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 periods in warm ups. Then he was off to the side, not getting any reps during those. So
Yeah. And so yeah, if the Ducks can have him back for Penn State, I do think that just raises their floor.
exactly.
They've got ceiling raisers in this running back room. It's so deep, and they've got guys who can make explosive plays. But he just feels like he raises the floor of this room. He's a guy who's gonna get against Penn State. He's a guy who can get you 3 or 4 yards a carry consistently. And it feels like there's sometimes that Jaden Lamar or some of these freshmen or Mekhi Hughes or Dink Riggs just maybe get stifled and they can get shut down a little bit. We haven't seen Noah Whittington against a great run defense yet. But
we haven't seen much of Noah Whittington at all because he didn't really have to play that much against Montana State or Oklahoma State because he was gashing them for big gains early. So,
but you'd obviously you'd hope to have him back for that Penn State game. I was curious, just a little bit. My Jordan Davison minute, he got a little bit more run today off the goal line. He obviously has been the Ducks goal line back. But somebody on Twitter, it might have been Zach Neal, was saying he's just got a little bit of wiggle when he gets a carry on 2nd and 8. What did you see from him there? I'm excited. It makes me excited to see him get those carries.
Yeah, I think he moves pretty better in space than you'd expect for someone who is. I don't know if he actually has 236 pounds. That's what he's listed at. That's huge for a running back.
He looks that big, man.
He does look like a bowling ball down there. But like you said, he does have a bit more wiggle than you would expect for someone his size. And he looked pretty good today at certain times when he did get out in space. And I think another thing that this team really likes with him is his blocking, because he has that size in the blocking game. But last week I noticed that he really was in a lot of the similar the same 21 personnel looks that they do give to Jaden Lamar to get him blocking for those other running backs and for Noah Whittington. They used a lot of that with Jordan Davison, and I saw it again today where he was out there to pass block a couple of times. They ran that same load counter play today that they ran for Dia Hill's big touchdown last week, where Davison was the lead blocker on that. And then there's another one too where they go 21 personnel, put him basically off the ball in a bunch, almost in like the tight end spot, and then ran him as the sift blocker to run to run split zone. So it's telling where they just put him in these positions where they can use him as a weapon, as a blocker, and I think that's going to continue to get him on the field. And then from there, it's going to be the same the one we saw from Jeremiah McClellan against Oklahoma State, where you fake the sift block on the split zone and then head out into the flats, and Moore's going to dump it off to Davison and let him rumble after that. So he's going to continue that blocking is certainly going to keep him on the field this season. And then from there, it's going to be opening things up with some of the surprise packages and some of the surprise plays off of it, where you're only really scouting him as a goal line back. And then all of a sudden he's got the ball in space and he's able to pick up 20 yards or something.
Yeah. I'm going to give a little bit of flowers to J-Mac too, who's also been a phenomenal downfield blocker. Early this season, he gets his first touchdown catch as a Duck. He gave a big smile when he got asked about it. And I thought that was really fantastic. He's a happy dude. Where does he fit in this receiver room? Obviously, Oregon is down. Evan Stewart still. He's really earned himself some reps with his blocking, with some really solid route running, just to become a guy who seems a little bit beyond his age here. He feels like a vet in the way he works for this team. Where does he land in terms of this season that keeps going?
Yeah, so because Justice Lowe is out right now, Lowe did not. He warmed up but didn't play against Northwestern last week. We didn't see him out there for warmups again today.
List is out.
Yeah, but he seems to be dealing with something right now. So that has moved McClellan as to kind of solidifying that third outside receiver spot behind. It's been early. It's been Moore as the X, McClellan and Malik Benson rotating at C, that other like kind of off the ball outside receiver. And then Justice Lowe had been worked, some of the backing up Decorian Moore, working with some of those other guys. Those had been the 4 guys in the outside, and then Kyler Casper was that 5th guy. So now with Lowe out, it really has been McClellan this week, especially as that number 3 receiver on those outside sets. And like you said, he has given that effort in the blocking, and you can see they use him specifically, like they design plays that he is pulling as a blocker, and they're running this play behind him because they trust him to be a blocker there. And then it's something that Stein has done a really good job at, is rewarding those players for that hard blocking. And it continues to just, it cycles. The harder they block, then the player's able to catch a touchdown, then the harder they're going on and keep blocking out there the next time they have an opportunity to block, so that they can, catch the ball again. And McClellan's a really good example of that, and had a really good game today, as that other outside receiver. And I think we'll continue to see more of him getting that usage out there, next to Benson and next to Moore. I think Benson will continue to be that number one, that other number one on the outside besides Moore, just because of the speed dynamic that he brings and his ability to take the top off the defense. But McClellan's a guy who you can throw some of those jump balls to a little more. Although we did see Benson, we
go up for that one.
There's back shoulder catches today, but Malik Benson, that I honestly was more impressed by that one than either a DeCorian Moore's. That was just ridiculous body control on that one. So Oregon's receivers, it's a bit concerning right now, the lack of depth they have, because you do have some of these guys dealing with these injuries, but the guys they have, they trust out there and they feel comfortable with going forward.
Yeah, and also kind of in the passing game, I felt like there were a lot more designed looks for Kenyon Sadiq today, even if they didn't connect on all of them. He's been a guy that they've used way more in the blocking game. He had a touchdown against Northwestern, but it felt like he hadn't had a lot of looks through 3 weeks, and then he really popped out today. Where he's obviously a huge weapon. He can be the go-to guy on third and long, just because of his ability to beat guys off the line and be a mismatch player. Where does he fit in? What do you see from him today? Where does he land?
Yeah, led the team today, 7 targets, tied his career high with 4 catches on the day, set a new career high with 60 yards, and then obviously scoring that touchdown. You can't let a guy like that get open on a wheel route. That's a bad coverage play by Oregon State. But I thought you continued to see him really settle into more of being that comfort option for Dante. He had a couple of catches on like third downs to convert the chains, where he's just kind of settling and able to let Dante find him over the middle. But I think he really could, he leads the team in targets today, and I think we could continue to see that be a trend throughout the rest of the season. Because I just don't think they were scheming things up for him really in those first couple of weeks, because he obviously has been dominant as a blocker. They didn't really feel like they needed to. I think pound for pound, he's probably the best weapon on this team. DeCorian Moore could certainly give him an argument, but they want, Will Stein has a feed the studs mentality, as a coach. He wants to get the ball in his best players' hands as much and as early and as often as he can. And he was doing that with Sadiq today. And I think it's something that they kind of wanted to get Sadiq in that kind of role where he is the number one receiver a little bit more today before they head to Penn State, where, he could be a guy they really rely on next week to kind of pick up those third downs, move the ball down the field, and then when they have those opportunities, create explosives, because he can from the tight end position.
Yeah. Before we get into that Penn State game, which we'll talk really briefly about at the end of this show, I want to talk about James Ferguson Reynolds, who's a fantastic interview. Takes his read, felt a little bit like a football player for 5 minutes. He said on that punt, really, it's an important spot because the Ducks go up a couple scores on that one, and really it feels like put the game out of reach, and that doesn't happen if they punt right there. You love to see that vision. He had another fantastic punt later in the game where really just line drives it down to the 5-yard line or so. We haven't seen a lot of them. It's important for your team to have a good punter. What do you think of him today?
Yeah, he's been solid so far early this season. The few opportunities he's gotten, been able to get good air yardage under it and flip the field a couple of times where he's had to, in the fourth quarter against Oklahoma State. But then, like you said today, being able to pin Oregon State back deep in their territory at one point, pinning them on their own 4-yard line with a punt that looked like it hit off his foot wrong or something. It just came out as a complete wobbly line drive. But these new punters, they do stuff like that on purpose. And he said that after the game. He was like, I saw the returner standing over on the left hash, so I said, well, let's try to kick a line drive to the right corner. And that's exactly what he did. The ball is bouncing down there. Oregon State's player didn't want to touch it, and Oregon's able to pin it deep. And then the fake punt, I thought it was really funny for him to say that felt like he got to be a football player out there because, it's an Australian guy. He didn't grow up playing football, didn't grow up with this game, like so many punters out there nowadays. But just being able to feel like a football player, I thought was really funny because we also saw he runs for 21 yards, runs out of bounds, and then decides to slide, which I thought was really funny. Because there's like a little bit of flair on the slide too. He kind of put his hand up.
Yeah, it's like a real slide into second base kind of thing.
Yeah. It was certainly 100% for style points, because at that point he was already out of bounds. But he was like, yeah, I had to feel like a bit of a football player, get that slide in there. I bet that's something that Oregon saw at halftime or something like that. Whenever, one of those first punts they did, they probably watched that film back and were like, hey, Oregon State, everybody is bailing out of here on this right side. So if we just, because it's the classic like punt or draw fake where they just look like they're going to punt it and then you just keep running. And Oregon State thought he took 2 steps, they thought he was going to punt it, and then everyone turned around and he just kept running. Super easy first down. So
seems like a happy guy. It's good to have a happy punter in your room.
Yeah, and they actually, I think he had 21 yards on that play, and then I think Oregon State had 20 or something like that total in that second half on the ground. So it was fewer, certainly fewer.
Get him in the backfield, Trent Bray.
Yeah, let me wait. Where's my? Oh no, 11. Sorry, 11 yards in the second half. So James Ferguson Reynolds single-handedly outgained Oregon State on the ground by 10 yards in the second half of the game.
There you go. That's about how that one went. We're gonna take a look at this Penn State game now. It's about time to start previewing what's now a college game day matchup officially. It's here, and I think the question to start with is just like, is Oregon ready? That's the question we've been asking, and now there's not that much more preparation to do. Certainly no more game time preparation. Is Oregon ready to head into Penn State and give the Nittany Lions a fight?
I feel like they're as ready as they're going to be at this point. I mean, like you really can't say because you haven't seen them against those teams, against that level of competition yet to this point. But everything we've seen on the field has said that, Oregon is one of the best teams in the country, and they are going to go out and compete at Penn State. It's just hard to say that without actually seeing it yet at this point because, they haven't played those teams yet.
Yeah, you certainly feel like, though, you've seen the poise from Dante Moore. You've seen the step up to the, not just the power 4, but like the really like top upper echelon level, just of mentality and of movement speed from some of these guys who came in and hadn't played at that level before, hadn't played consistently. But like that's where my like confidence in this team lies, is just that you haven't seen them wobble that much just on their own, regardless of who they're playing. It's a confident team. That goes back to what we were saying about Dante Moore. It goes back to these DBs, to a new look secondary that really has just kept the shell on guys who like Malik Murphy wants to go deep. This is a guy who understands how to throw the ball deep, even if he's in an offense that really doesn't succeed. And they were able to keep the shell on him. Part of that's because the running game wasn't great, but you start looking at a team like Penn State and what they're great at. And you say, hey, Drew Aller can throw it deep. They do have a great running game, and those both feel like places where the Ducks have either succeeded all season long or made market improvements.
Yeah, like you said, confidence, I think, is the biggest factor for this. I think Oregon believes that they're ready for this game, that they've done, the work in practice. They've shown it on the field that they are ready to go out there and compete. And so they're going to go out there and they're going to, you're going to be ready to hit and be ready to run, when Penn State gets out there on that field. It's going to be a different environment than they've seen early this season, in terms of, they got a crazy environment at home, but it's your home crowd. They're behind you. And then going on the road to Northwestern where, it's a difficult situation because you're not in like a real stadium really, but the crowd is not an issue to the same level it's going to be at Penn State. So this team believes they're ready, and they're going to be as ready, they're as ready as they're going to be. They've done what they can to feel like they're prepared to this point. They're going to keep hammering on those details in practice this week. But at this point, it comes down to the work they've done throughout the offseason, throughout practice, throughout these first couple of games to feel like they are ready to compete at the highest level. So I'm excited. I'm excited for sure.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, everything that we're saying about Oregon, the Ducks haven't been tested. They haven't played a real Power 4 team yet. Applies to Penn State. I don't know that Nittany Lions have even played a Power 4 team yet. And so you just land in a spot where you're like, hey, this is not only like the defining game of these two teams' seasons, but it's also their first chance to really show the world. And that matters for resume, for polls, for saying this is how we match up early in the season. We're not banged up. Like this is pretty much our full strength, not for the Ducks. This is as healthy as we're going to be against the best team we're going to play. That matters.
Yeah, like you said, these teams are really in similar situations in terms of an easy build up to that first big game at the end of September. So it's just a chance for everybody across the nation to see what do these teams look like when they are competing against those top level teams, because that's what it's going to be come down to in December and in January when the months that this team is, their goals, they want to get through this season, but their goals lie in December and January. Their goals are a Big Ten championship and a national championship, and those aren't accomplished in September. So they know that no matter what does happen this weekend, right back to the process, right back to work throughout practice. They got a bye week after that, get things right, get everybody healthy, hammer out those details, and then keep with the grind of the season because you got 2 more months to go.
Yeah, Dan Lanning said the switch was already flipped when he walked into his press conference today. Our switch is already flipped too. We're gonna be back Monday before that press conference to talk about this Penn State game. Really give you all the info you need to know, break it down. We appreciate everybody hanging with us. Enjoy your Saturday. Glad you enjoyed the game, and we'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening.